Hello there guys, I'm Unstable Voltage and welcome back to my EU4 tutorial series. In the last couple of videos we talked about starting a war and the act of combat. In this video we're going to talk about the peace system and the way that works. So in order to facilitate that, I have just played a few years into a new game as Castile. I declared war on Grenada. And Grenada have both Morocco and Tunis as their ally. So in this war, if I click on the shield down here at the bottom that shows us the current war, you can see that I don't have any allies on my side. So it's Castile, which is me, versus Grenada, Morocco and Tunis. Now you'll see the war goal was to take Grenada. I fabricated a claim on the province of Grenada itself, which is Grenada's capital. And I went to war with them and they have two allies. Now one thing you'll notice here is that they have the little red flag. Morocco and Tunis have these little red flags next to their shields, which means that they are just allies and they're not co-belligerents, which means that they can be pieced out separately. That is an important thing to remember. You can't piece out the war leader separately, because once the war leader is pieced out, it is the end of the war. And the war leaders will be the person who declared war and the person who they declared war against. Now that's slightly different to how it was in earlier versions of EU4, where sometimes if a minor nation got involved in a war and they had a very large ally on their side, sometimes the large ally would take over as war leader. Doesn't happen anymore in EU4. So whoever declares war on the attacker's side is the war leader, and whoever they declare war against on the defender's side is also the war leader. Now any subject nations, such as colonial nations, vassals, personal union partners, they cannot be separate pieced out. They only go when their overlord is pieced out. And if it's something like a coalition war, then coalition members can't be separate pieced out, but allies can. So that's something that we will talk about there. So let's talk a little bit more about the war score. Now, obviously, I said war score can go, and it starts off at 0, which is neutral, and can go anywhere up to plus 100, which is in your favour, and down to minus 100, which is in the enemy's favour. Now, obviously, you want to get a positive war score. You don't need to get 100% war score. It all depends how much you want to take from the enemy. Obviously, the more war score you have, the more you will be able to take. But remember that taking a lot of stuff can cause aggressive expansion and overextension. So you're not necessarily going to want to take everything from your opponent all in one go. So how's the war score calculated? Well, if we actually look at the state of play at the moment, I have managed to siege and occupy all of Grenada's 3 provinces. I have managed to siege and occupy 3 of Morocco's provinces. Now bear in mind there are some more provinces sieged out here because Morocco are in a separate war with Portugal, but that's nothing to do with me. And then if we actually look over here at Tunis, I don't have anything of Tunisia or Tunis sieged out. If we zoom out a little bit and I go and click on the diplomatic map mode, all the red area is the area that we are at war with. Now what you'll notice is we only have 51% war score. So the way it used to work is if you sieged out the war leader and 100% occupied them, you would get 100% war score. It doesn't work that way anymore. In order to get 100% war score, I would have to siege and occupy all of the enemy territory that is involved in this war. This is why it's important to be able to piece people out separately, because the more people are involved in the war on the opposite side, the more land you have to take to get that 100%. If you can piece these people out separately, then there's less land in total, which means the land that you do occupy will be worth a higher percentage. Now there's a second way to get 100% war score, which only involves having to siege out the war leader, and that is wait 10 years. So even though I've got all of Grenada sieged, I only have 51% war score. If this war goes on for 5 years from when it started, then the siege, the 100% siege of the war leader will count as a 100% war score in the war itself. So the little shield always shows you your war score with the war leader. I have a 51% war score against Grenada. And we can see that if I actually go and click on the Sue for Peace button up here in the top right hand corner, and you'll actually see I have a 51% war score. Now, if you look down the sides of the Sue for Peace screen here, The war leaders go on the top, and then anyone else involved in the war on either side appears down the sides. So at the moment, I am Castile, and I am speaking directly with Grenada. If you actually read here in the summary, it says, we negotiate on behalf of our entire alliance, and they are negotiating for their entire alliance. But if I was to go ahead and click on Morocco, for example, down here, as it says click to change the peace target. If I was to go ahead and click on Morocco, it now says we negotiate on behalf of our entire alliance, and they are merely negotiating for themselves. This is Castile talking to Morocco. So what we could do is we could go straight to Morocco and say, look, how about we peace out? And if they accept, we can get Morocco out of the war. Now, there's a couple of ways you can get into this screen. So you can left click on the war shield at the bottom and then click the icon in the top right hand corner. Or you can just right click directly on the shield. That will bring you to the same screen. Or you can go to an individual nation involved in the war, right click on them and hit the Sue for Peace button. And that will take you straight to that screen to make sure you're talking with them. So it's always worth making sure you are speaking to the right people. Now, even though I've got a 51% war score against the war leader, I don't have a 51% war score against Tunisia because I only occupy 3 of their provinces. So if we actually go and look at Tunisia here, I actually only have a 25% war score against them. Now, that is still enough to take something. If we go ahead and have a look at Tunis, who I don't occupy anything that belongs to Tunis, if I go and sue for peace there, it says I have a 0% war score. And as you can see, this little red cross here says that they are not willing to peace out. Currently, with the offer cleared, with a little button down at the bottom, with the offer cleared, it is a white peace. Nobody will gain or lose anything. But Tunisia aren't willing to go for a white peace. If we actually look down here, we can see that the peace offer value is 0. Well, the war score is 0, so that should be fine. But this little red cross indicates that they will not agree to it. And if we mouse over, it tells us why. So they've got one positive reason for wanting to accept, but negative 38 reasons for wanting to accept, which obviously is a total of negative 37. And it gives us all of the reasons why. So the length of war is quite short. The longer the war goes on, the more that will burn off and the more willing they will be to accept peace. They also have an ally in the war as well, so because they have someone in the war helping them, they are more reluctant to give up. And also, Tunis holds Tunis, i.e. they hold their own capital. If we were to go and siege their capital out, we would gain a lot of war score against them, and they'd also be more likely to peace out. And also, they believe that their military strength is quite high, and that is keeping them in the game. So we couldn't really get Tunisia to peace out, so we're going to ignore them for the moment. So what if I wanted to go and get Morocco out of this war? Well, I do have 25% war score against Morocco. So at the moment, with a white peace, they would actually be willing to peace out. And as you can see, the reason they would be willing to peace out is because we're getting 33 points from having occupied and besieged provinces. Now, don't forget, that's not just our province, the provinces that we've got sieged. Portugal are sieging out their provinces as well. Now, that doesn't count towards our war, but it is making life more difficult for Morocco. And if we actually go and look at the sort of war screen here, you'll see that Morocco's war enthusiasm is very low and their war exhaustion is very high. And that's not just because of the war they're in with us. That's because of all of the wars they're in. So they've got a lot of their land sieged out by Portugal, and that is causing them to have a really, really low war enthusiasm. And low war enthusiasm will make the AI more likely to peace out. So let's go back and look at Morocco here. And we can also see that Moroccan military strength plus 22, Moroccan war exhaustion plus 16. So they've had most of their army wiped out. They do have a few units left up here, but their army compared to mine is small. And they feel that they can happily get out of this war at this point. We could peace them out. So let's talk about how the war score screen works here. It's more difficult to say than you'd think, but it is. So what you basically have is, in order to take something from somebody, you need to have war score. If you go ahead and click on any province, it'll tell you how much war score it is worth. Now, what you've got to remember is, if you don't co-belligerize somebody, then something would cost double the war score to take. So you can see Tangier is a 12% war score province. But if we were to go and find Tangier and ask for it in the peace deal, it's actually 25% war score. And that's because they're not co-belligerized. So in order for us to take Tangiers, it would cost us twice as much war score as it should do. Remember, if you co-belligerize somebody, you can take something for the standard price, but it also means that they can call their own allies into the war and you can't separate peace them. So let's have a look at that. Tangiers here, it's showing up in blue, which means that I can take it. The ones that are showing up in grey, there's a few times where you can't take provinces from somebody else. One is if they're currently occupied by somebody else. So a lot of these provinces are currently occupied by Portugal. And in previous versions of EU4, you were able to pretty much take any province as long as it was occupied. Now, you don't need to occupy a province to ask for it now, but it does need to be within coring range. So all of these ones that are greyed out are out of coring range. So you can core any province that is adjacent to a core province. So I could core Grenada, Gibraltar and Almeria because they're all adjacent to cored provinces. Or you can core any province that shares a sea with a cored province. Obviously, we've got Cadiz and Sevilla here, which are cored provinces, and Tangiers shares the Straits of Gibraltar with them. So we can actually do that. The third one is any coastal province which is within your colonization range. So we might be able to go and grab something like Haha here, Haha, Heha. I'm not even sure how that's pronounced, but we could potentially grab that if it was within our coring range. So if we go and have a look and find it on the list, I'm talking to the wrong people here. We want to be talking to Morocco. And there it is, it's there, and it's actually blue, and it's blue because it's within our coring range. So we could grab this if we wanted. So that's basically how it works in terms of grabbing land. Now, there is one little minor bug in 1.13, which they may sort out, is that your colonization range is calculated as the distance from your closest unblockaded port. So obviously my closest unblockaded port here is Cadiz. Now, the problem is if we were in this war and the enemies had some ships there and they were blockading Cadiz and Sevilla, it might say that this isn't within range of coring, and therefore I wouldn't be able to core it because it's without of coring range, which is stupid, because the moment we declare peace, we're no longer blockaded and it's within colonization range of these provinces. So you may need to clear out some blockading ships in order for those to work. So let's go back in and actually have a look at the peace deal and explain a little bit about this screen. So I've already explained how you've got all of the allies on one side and all of the enemies on the other side. It tells you up here details such as what the CB for the war was about, what the war score is with the current person you're negotiating with, and the war goal. Now, along the top here, you've got two tabs. Now, you can distinguish between them very quickly because one is green and one is red. So, green is demanding tribute. This means you are ahead in the war and you are asking for stuff back. Red means that you are losing in the war, or you just want to concede the war and you are offering to give stuff away. Most of the time, you don't ever want to be doing that. You want to be demanding tribute. Now, as far as war score goes, you can wipe peace at 0 war score, but normally the AI won't agree to a peace unless there's either positive 10 or negative 10 war score. Not always the case. If their war enthusiasm is low enough, they will often take a peace even if the war score is below the 10%. Now, even though I've said that if you ask for something, the AI doesn't necessarily have to give it to you. So we have 25% war score. I could go in and ask for Tangiers, and they would actually be willing to give me Tangiers. So 25% war score, 25% war score. It is actually possible sometimes to ask for something that is worth more than the war score. Now, the most you can ask for is a peace offer of 100%, and the most war score you can get is 100%. If you get 100% war score, the AI cannot refuse the peace deal. You still can't go over 100% with what you asked for, but they cannot refuse. If you're at 100%, whatever you ask for, they have to give it to you. So there are a couple of different options that you can choose along these tabs at the top. Now, some of them may or may not be lit, depending on who you're fighting against and the situation. So the first thing you've got here is seed provinces. Seed provinces basically means you're going to give that province to someone else. Now, at the moment, all of the provinces have my flag next to them, which means I will be asking for them. And if they cede those provinces, they will go to me. They will become Castilian. Now, because I don't have any allies in this war, all of the provinces that are sieged are actually sieged by myself. If any of the provinces were sieged by my allies and were in my allies' colour, then when I went for the peace deal, they would have my allies' flag next to them. And that would be saying that I'd be ceding that province to an ally. Now, you can also change that manually by going to an occupied province, which should be left click, and it says here that it's occupied by us, and you see our flag. Now, the button's actually greyed out because there are no allies in this war, but if I had allies in the war, I could actually click this flag and flip the occupation over to an ally, providing they had a interest in it, either a claim on it, a core on it, or it was adjacent to one of their cores. It's just a little useful method if you want to actually give something away to one of your allies. So that's the first tab. Cede provinces basically means taking land. Now remember, if you take any land, now let's just say we want to take Tangiers, you can do it by actually clicking on the map directly, as well as actually by clicking here. Now what you can see here is we can't actually select this province because we can't make it a core. But if we selected Haha, and we could core Haha, then we'd be able to core Marrakesh, because Marrakesh would be adjacent to a core. So you can actually ask for other provinces, and we can't get any of the rest because they're occupied by somebody else. Can only demand occupied provinces from secondary participants in war. So we can't normally core Marrakesh because Marrakesh is out of coring range. But if we were to grab and core Haha, then we would be able to grab Marrakesh. So that's why it changes colour when we select that. So let's just say, for example, I want Tangiers. Now what I could do if I wanted to is I could go to Grenada, and I could sue for peace with Grenada, and I could actually ask Grenada for Tangiers. So I could actually go and say to Grenada, look, I want to peace out, I want to end the war, talking to the war leader, and I want something from one of your allies. And they can actually agree to that. But of course, doing that would end the entire war. So we're going to be talking directly with Morocco. Now remember, if you do select anything in a peace deal, and then you close this window, if you go back into it, it does remember the peace deal. But it remembers the peace deal for each individual person you've spoken to. So sometimes it's a good idea just to hit clear offer before you do anything. So let's say that we want to go ahead and grab Tangiers. I'm going to click on that. And instantly, this stuff down here at the bottom changes. It tells me that I would gain 1.7 prestige. It would cost me 21 diplomatic power for the peace deal. I would get 5.1 aggressive expansion relations penalty, but it actually says that I would suffer between 2 and 19 aggressive expansion with 11 countries. And down here at the bottom, it tells me that I would get 7% overextension. Now, the rest of these buttons, some of these aren't highlighted because we can't perform these actions. Revoking cores would get an enemy to basically give up a claim on a core. So if they had a, let's say that at some point Morocco used to own Cadiz and Morocco had a core there, we could tell them to revoke that core. You can also get them to return cores. If they actually own a province that is someone else's core, you can get them to return that core. You also have the option to get them to cancel subjects. So if they have any vassals, you can tell them to release the vassal. You can also get them to release nations. Let's say, for example, as Castile, that I completely gobble up Grenada. Grenada no longer exists. Someone could go to war with me and force me to release Grenada as a separate nation. You also then have the option to annul treaties, which allows you to force your opponents to break any deals that they have with other nations, such as alliances, such as trade agreements, and anything like that. They're not allowed to have anything to do with one another. Very useful if you want to split up some allies. And then finally, you've got treaties. And treaties is quite an interesting tab because there's often a lot of things in here, and this allows you to enforce certain things. So instead of fully annexing a city or fully annexing a nation, you also have the option to vassalize them. Now, vassalizing doesn't usually give you vassalization doesn't give you overextension because it technically isn't your land. It's just a vassal of your land. You still need a good amount of war score to vassalize or fully annex a nation. As you can see, we've got no full annex option here under cede provinces. There used to be an option to full annex, which would tell you what it would cost to take everything. You've also got some other things, so you can enforce fleet basing or enforce military access, which is exactly what you would think. You're forcing that person to allow you to base your fleets there, or to allow you to bring your military through. You can also enforce them to transfer trade power to you. Now, what you've got to remember is that any of these things, enforced fleet basing, military access and trade power, all of that costs you a relationship slot. Now, one useful thing is war reparations. War reparations costs 10% in a war, and that forces them to pay them 10% of their income to you for 10 years. That is a very, very nice one that you want to take. Gives you a little bit more prestige as well. As you can see, they're not willing to accept it because they currently have negative for reasons to do that. And mainly because of demands are exceeding the war score. We might be able to sort that out, though, and get those war reparations from them. You've also got these little buttons down here at the bottom where you can actually ask them for money. Of course, the more money you ask for, the more the war score is, or the more the peace value costs. So we'll leave that at 0 for now. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly unpause, because what I'd like to do, and obviously everyone is sending us some peace deals here, I can't really go ahead and siege anything more out because Portugal are over here doing a great job, and it does look like we've got some more troops coming in, so maybe I don't want to hang around and wait for this fight. But what I was trying to do is wait for another month, maybe 2, and see if it was possible to actually get these guys to be a little bit more willing to go for that slightly more favourable peace deal, and we could get the war reparations from them. So I think we'll just go up to speed 3. I'm just going to be careful because we have got this Tunis army milling around. There's another month. If we go back in and have another word with Morocco, they're still unwilling. They're only on -2 now. So as you can see, their unwillingness to accept that peace deal is actually going down with each month because they're getting higher and higher war exhaustion. They're getting less and less war enthusiasm. It looks like they're actually disbanding some of their army. Possibly because they're out of money. Now Aragon are going in there and they're going to go and take them out. Now this won't give us any war score because it's not ourselves fighting them, but it will certainly help things out. I'm going to move these guys up and maybe we can go and jump on and finish them off if Aragon doesn't do the job, because they are in the mountains, so Aragon are getting a massive penalty there. But Aragon actually won that, and we're in the next month. So if we go in here now and actually have a word with them, that's the wrong people. So now they're actually willing to accept that. So if we look down here at the summary, we can see that we negotiate on behalf of our entire alliance and they are merely negotiating for themselves. Morocco will cede Tangiers to Castile. Morocco will be forced to give Castile 10% of their income each month for war reparations, and this will last for 10 years. The peace will cost Castile 21 diplomatic power, and with no Cassius Belli, Castile gains 3.7 prestige. I don't know why it says no CB, because, well, we don't have a CB directly against Morocco here. So we will gain 3.7 prestige and will suffer 5.1 aggressive expansion relations penalty, and the peace will give Morocco -2 prestige. So we can see exactly here what we will get. And it also says that this deal will establish a truce until the 20th of November 1959, which is about, what, 7.5 years. So if you white peace, you get a truce of 5 years. If you get a war score deal that is 100%, the truce will last for 15 years. And it's a sliding scale in between. So basically, the more you ask for in terms of the peace offer value, the longer the truce will last. If you take 100%, then it will be a 15-year truce. If you white peace 0%, it'll be a 5-year truce, and then it could pretty much be anything in between, I think, in blocks of 6 months. So we could go ahead and take this this peace offer, or we could make them accept it. They would accept it, so it tells us that they would there. So that's what we're going to do. We might even be able to get a little bit of money out of them. Not quite. They wouldn't quite accept the 36, so we won't take any money from them. We will just go ahead and take this. Now, remember this important thing that it says here. With no CB, we gain 3.7 prestige. That's because we don't have a CB against Morocco. They're only in this war because they're an ally. So we're going to send our demands. We're going to unpause the game. And then it comes up and says that they have now accepted. And all of the information in this screen is the same as what we saw in the peace deal. But now we have 57% war score. And the reason we have 57% war score is because if we go and look at the diplomatic map mode, all this red stuff's gone. These guys are no longer involved in the war. It's just these guys and these guys. Now, we still don't have any war score against Tunis, and we aren't going to get any. So let's go across now and look directly at Grenada and try and sue for peace with these guys. Now, Grenada is their capital, and that's what I actually made a claim on. Now, it used to be in EU4 that you couldn't take somebody's capital province. There was only two ways you could take somebody's capital. First of all, if you were fully annexing them. If you had enough war score to take everything they had left, including their capital, you could take the capital. The second way was to isolate their capital. Let's say, for example, because Castile's capital here is Toledo, let's say somebody came and sieged out and took over parts of Castile and took Madrid and all of these other provinces around there and just left Toledo on its own in the middle. Then the capital would be isolated. Now, obviously, you can move your capital, but assuming that you didn't move it, if you had an isolated capital, somebody could take that from you in a war. But if they took a capital, they couldn't take anything else. That's now changed in common sense. In common sense, capital's a fair game. So I can go in to Grenada here and say, I want to take your capital. I want Grenada. Now, you will notice, if you actually look at the list, they've only got 3 provinces, so there isn't an awful lot of stuff we can do here. We can get them to annul their treaties with Tunis, and we've got some stuff here that we can do as well. A few more extra options here. You'll see, one, we've got Concede Defeat. Now, you can only get Concede Defeat with the war leader. Conceding Defeat doesn't really do an awful lot other than give you some prestige. So I can basically click that, and it says, Grenada will concede defeat, and with a conquest CB, we would gain 10 prestige. So you can see we actually have a CB against these guys, but we're not going to take that as an offer. Now, we could actually take them as a vassal. It would only cost us 37% war score. We're at 57. Now, if we click it, they're actually unwilling to do it. And the main reason for that is, as it says, there's a very massive penalty at the bottom there, and it would result in Grenada's annexation or vassalization. So basically, if they were to accept this peace offer, they're out of the game. So they always have that very, very big negative modifier. As you can see, though, they are only minus 16 reasons away from accepting. So we could probably get them to agree to that if we wanted to. But if we just go back to the Seed Provinces screen here, one thing you will notice is that Grenada has this little icon next to it on the right-hand side. And this is because it is the war goal. And if you actually look here, it says it doesn't cost us any diplomatic power. If we wanted to take Almeria or Gibraltar, it would cost us 18% diplomatic power. But because this is part of the war goal, it doesn't actually cost us any diplo power. So we can grab that nice and easily. And if we were to go ahead and click on Grenada, they would accept. So Grenada will cede Grenada to Castile. With the Conquest CB, we'd gain 3.7 prestige and suffer 5.5 aggressive expansion. Now, we could go ahead and click on these and say, can we fully annex you? They're still going to say no, because they've still got those negative penalties. Now, we could go ahead and allow time to tick on. Obviously, our soldiers are over here, our army's black flagged. We could go over and start fighting with Tunisia, but there isn't really an awful lot of point. So we could just go over and just try and get back to our own territory, which is probably the best thing to do. Now, we are getting peace offers from Grenada, and as time goes on, they are going to get more and more war exhaustion, because they're in a position where they can't produce any troops, they can't do anything, they're not making any money, because they don't, we have a full occupation of all of their land. So there's absolutely nothing Grenada can do at the moment. Obviously, we're being told that we need to core provinces because we took Tangiers. So let's just go and tell it to do that, just so that it stops bothering me. And we'll use our ships and just move our army back to the mainland. And we'll just quickly keep our eye on it. The war score probably isn't going to go up, but they've got low war enthusiasm. And as you can see, each month their war exhaustion goes up and up and up. They're still unwilling to take it, but they're now down to only -9 reasons. Now, obviously, we still don't have the ability to separately peace out Tunis because we have a 0% war score against them, so they wouldn't be willing to peace out. Of course, I could do something like offering tribute, and if I don't know what to give them, I can go suggest an offer. So the game is actually suggesting that I give Tunis war reparations, and I annul my treaties with Portugal, and I give them 182 ducats. If I was willing to do that, that would get Tunis out of the war. So I'm actually going to do that because I want to show you an example of offering a tribute. So we just double check that. So what I would be doing is I would be giving Tunis war reparations for 10 years. I'll annul my treaties with Portugal, and I will pay 182 ducats. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and peace out with Portugal. So that was me giving with Tunis. So that was me giving something away. But what you will notice now, if we actually go ahead and look at the diplomatic map mode, the only person left in the war is Grenada. And because Grenada are the only people left in the war, and I occupy 100% of their provinces, I've now got a 100% war score. And because I've got a 100% war score, they have to give me whatever I ask from them, up to 100%, so I can ask for all their money. I can fully annex them. Obviously, I can't take any of the treaties, because once I fully annex them, they won't exist anymore. I could choose not to fully annex them. Instead, I could go and make them into a vassal. And I could still ask for all of their money. Now, that's a 46% war score. But as you can see, it says positive 100, negative 0. So they're utterly defeated. You get plus 100 reasons for accepting when they're utterly defeated. So now I can go in and send my demands. The war is over, and we have Grenada as a vassal. Grenada is a vassal under Castile. So that's how the peace system works. So you can individually peace out people on the other side. Remember, it does work both ways. It's very possible that you might have an ally fighting on your side that makes a separate peace. And be careful with that, because if you've allowed an ally to do the lion's share of the sieging in a war, and they separate peace out, then you're going to lose a lot of war score, because all the provinces that they had sieged will become unsieged. So do be very careful of that one. And also remember, in a war, whenever there's a battle, the war score from battles goes to the war leader. But war score from sieging and occupation goes to whoever is sieging or occupying the province. And also who the war score is against depends on where's being sieged. So for example, if in that last war, every time I defeated a Moroccan army, I would gain war score against the war leader, Grenada. But every time I sieged a Moroccan province, I'd gain war score against Morocco. But it's still worth taking out the Moroccan armies anyway, because one, it means they can't really come and scupper your plans, and secondly, it does reduce their war enthusiasm, and it increases their war exhaustion for getting their armies killed. But that's basically the way the peace deals work, and now you guys pretty much have all the tools you need to be able to play this game to a competent level. There's still a few more videos that I'm going to do, mainly covering things like religion and the HRE, colonisation. Not too sure what order I'm going to do them in yet, because they do require a little bit of setup, maybe with the exception of the HRE, but I will do those in a future video. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hope you found these videos useful, and I'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye for now.